We're live.
Welcome back again, guys, to the UAT live stream. Earlier we had a couple of topics with Dr. David Bowman and a couple other things revolving, emerging tech, AI, computers, everything within that spectrum. And now we're coming back, and we have Matthew Markwitt. He's one of the teachers here on campus. He teaches game design, but he worked on, his beloved game that he talks so much about, Cars. And he'll talk a lot more about Cars once I hand the stream back over to these guys. But Markwitt will introduce himself a little bit, and we'll continue this live stream as usual. See you guys later.
So that's a tasty looking cupcake you're eating there. Yeah, what's funny is when people say I worked on cars, they're like, "Oh, you were a mechanic."
Yeah.
You gotta say Pixar's. Yeah, you gotta say Pixar.
Well, at least
Cars
2, and then it brings into question.
Well, I didn't do Cars 2.
Oh, really?
No, Cars 2 was an actual movie that also had a game tied to it, but that came out way later.
Oh.
Right. In fact, when we actually did a sequel called Cars Mater National. And I worked on that too. And the reason why it was called Cars Mater National is because they knew in the future, at the time, that they were going to do a Cars 2, and they were going to want to call the game Cars 2 and not be confused with the Cars 2 game with the Cars 2 movie that were not, it made no sense. So, understanding things in the future helps. Now, I don't know if anyone, how high res this video is, but from this angle, since I'm looking this way,
we're looking this way.
My glasses are bright. Okay? You can actually see I don't have, yeah, he didn't even notice it's sitting right next to me.
Wait a minute.
I actually do have, okay. So from this side, with the cameras catching me on,
Yeah, no, you can see
it's like I have these floating glasses.
Yeah, no, it's
Right?
very
Right?
magical.
Spectacles, they just sort of sit there.
Yeah, the Morpheus from the Matrix, like the little sunglasses that he had. No, this is called One-Year-Old Baby. She's like, oh, what's this? Oh my gosh! Like, and $200 and something later, I have a new pair of glasses, but of course it takes like a week and a half for them to come in. So while I'm waiting at the UAT experience and in this live stream, I have half of the glasses.
Well, why don't you introduce all of our viewers and us here at the table what it's like to be a level designer in something like the Cars.
And what it's like to be half a man, half class.
Half a man.
Half a man? I don't know how that works. But well, as far as game design is concerned, just games in general, I think the one big thing, and at UAT experience is what we do. I try to teach the students to go, right? They come in, or potential students, they come in and I like video games. Is that why you're here? Because if that's all that you're here for, recognize that the industry is a lot more work than that, right? You got to really be super passionate about it. You got to work hard. But it's one of those things. It's one of those fields where you can fool around a lot. Like when I was actually in the industry, sure, you're working, but we would have these soundboards. You guys remember the soundboards? You push something and it'll be like Arnold would say something or whatever, and you have all these different things you can click on. So there's a guy I was sitting next to, and he had a Judge Judy one. And I had an Arnold one, and we would make them talk. And we got so good at it. That it sounded like they were having conversations. So we would be like, just clicking these buttons. And we'd have the whole bay laughing. It'd be like big open bay where everyone's working, and we were just having these two talk, and it just sounded like it was scripted. We got so good at it. And the programmers hated us. And they were, because I'm design and art. And so they were off in a different room. Everyone else is in this big open bay, but the programmers were off to the side. And they would be like, stop laughing at me so loud. And they're like, whatever. It's like, you got your own room. We're out here. But anyways, the whole concept is a lot of work, but there's a lot of play. I mean, it's video games, right? You got to have fun and that kind of stuff. But, that's kind of a very, very open-ended question. It's really hard to narrow down. What is it like to be a designer? Well, you breathe. You go to work. You have a life outside of it, I think. No.
Okay, so a better question would be, take us into your mindset. What does a game designer think about?
Well, actually, one of the other things I try to stress is the first thing I try to stress, even with new students, is you're not making games for yourself. You're changing a mindset. To be a game designer, you're going from, hey, I love video games, I play these games, I love these kind of games, to, well, now I'm building a game for someone else. He's worried that I'm going to hit his cup. I'm Italian and from New York. I mean, it's almost like
it's a dangerous combination. You gotta give him like a.
There goes your cupcake.
Three.
Stop!
Three.
Anyway, so you're not building games for yourself. You're building for other people. So you have to understand what makes a game fun, and fun is arbitrary, right, and subjective. Okay, and so depending on who you're building for, who's your target audience. The only games I worked on in the industry, and this is just circumstance, this wasn't, like choice, were kids games.
It was entirely intentional.
No, it was all kids games. I don't play kids games. Well,
Are you sure?
I mean, yeah, exactly. I never played any of the games I worked on, right? So I worked on Cars and Cars Made International and Free Realms, Star Wars, Clone Wars Adventures, and the game with the students' knickknacks. I didn't end up playing any of them. I'm not the target audience of the game I was building for. But I do have to understand, what do they want? What do they want to play? And that is the real goal. So one of the first assignments that my Game 101 students do is I tell them, here's all these theories on fun and why people are motivated to play games or gamification and all these different things. And then they have to come back week 2, right, brand new students straight out of high school, and present in front of the whole class this information in these groups. And so, bam, but that's because I'm trying to teach them a bunch of stuff at once. It is about articulating. That's what game design is about. Getting the thought from your brain to everyone else. Because if you can't, you're useless, right? You're like, I got the best idea in the world. How many people say that? Right?
Everybody.
Yeah, it seems like, oh, yeah, he does.
But I'm a programmer.
But if you can't get it out and other people can't understand it, it's useless, right? And that's why a good game designer has to be able to articulate, get in front of people, tell their ideas, right? Be able to learn new things and understand their audience. And that's what I have them do, like, right off in the beginning, right? And so you've got to realize that you're the advocate for the player. That's a quote by actually Tracy Fullerton. She's also a professor, teaches game stuff or whatever in game design. She's written some books and stuff too, but yeah, it's like you're the advocate for the player. So you're the one who has to think, I'm making this experience for them, not for me, right? And that's really what game design is all about, is thinking that way. Changing your mindset from being the player, and I, me, right, to them, and to what they want, right? So, yeah.
Okay, so you said a designer has to think about it's
Are you a robot?
The user.
He's been through speech class. He learns not to say,
I'm trying to articulate.
He's a programmer that thinks in a very different way.
If he's a programmer, he is a robot.
Yes. You said a designer thinks about his audience. Okay, so what technology would a designer think about in this era, like right now?
Well, obviously, virtual reality is a big thing right now, but the point is, I even teach sometimes in my student, in Game 113, which is my introduction to game tools class, right, where I teach them tools. Sometimes I ask them, do you think all this information in this class is relevant in 10 years?
No.
No! And I'm not saying, well, this is useless information because it's not relevant in 10 years. No, it's about the concept that when you work in a field that's based in tech, it's constantly changing. So one of the things that's most important for anybody that is in a field based in tech, especially game production, is that you're always up to date with the new tech and what's coming around the corner, and that you try to apply that stuff to your own designs, right? And you're always forward thinking, right? Now you guys might not know this, but Horizon Zero Dawn, which I was up till 5 in the morning this morning playing, that game took 6 years to make. 6 years.
That's it.
Can we think about that?
That's it.
Back when you were what, 11? Something like that?
No.
No,
Wait,
just kidding,
18.
I know, yeah.
No, with or without the DLC.
The one I bought with the DLC, because they just dropped it to $20. That's why I
Right.
bought it. Yeah, my 3 of my 4 kids are off with their biological dad for the summer, so I have free time. So when my wife goes to bed, I'm like playing games. So I don't normally do it.
Free time. This is scary.
Yeah, the free time basically means everyone went to sleep.
Just a reminder, because we got some feedback from the audience downstairs. We need to remember that we need to be clearly understood by something way over there, and sometimes looking at the audio bit that we've got here, half of your sentences I think are fading out of existence.
I think his voice is...
No, my voice is never a problem.
Yeah. Sometimes you're actually quite not remembering you're yelling into this poor boy's ear. But it's mostly a reminder to everyone else, because I don't think they really heard your first question ago.
Okay. Well, what I asked was, what does a designer think about? And then the second question was, what technology does a designer have to implement now in this era?
Yeah, and then as far as that question goes, there's no such answer, right? There's always, it's anything you wanna do, what are you building, right? You can build a phone game, or, you know, you can build, like I said, a virtual reality game. And the tech's gonna be different depending on what you're doing, or augmented reality, all these new things. But the truth is, you just have to understand your audience and what you're doing with. Another big thing about game design in general is the idea of constraints, right? And a lot of times we think of constraints or rules or things like that as things that bind us and force us to not be able to do stuff. I look at it the other way. I think that a lot of times rules and constraints offer freedom. Right. You look at that, and that's actually one of my assignments in the class that Justin took, right, Game 200, where I talk about how do rules derive freedom to the player. They have to think about that, and they have to actually answer that. And so the great thing is, as a game designer, you don't sit there and go, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this because tech, because time, because money. No, you go, well, what is the best game I can build, right, with the constraints I have? That's another one of your jobs, right, is to go, what is the best product I can create with the constraints? And that includes technology and all that other stuff. He's going to be right back.
Okay.
After these messages, we'll be back. Remember the Saturday cartoons?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you guys are too young. Anyway. But yeah, so there you go.
Well,
What's in those little eggs over there?
What's that?
Oh,
These are for participants.
you don't
ask
have, technically, I don't
questions.
think you count as a participant.
No,
you
no,
count as
you're
a
a
guest.
guest.
That's fine. That's fine.
It's very different.
That's
Get a
okay.
bottle of water if you
Ask
like.
ask Kevin. He might have something for you.
It's okay. I don't need it.
Well,
Look, you can hold one.
Dooley
For the
was
time
our.
You can look at it, investigate it.
Dooley
Why
was
you-
our subject person, but so I guess I'm gonna go off a bit.
Yeah.
You mentioned the tech that you use and that kind of stuff.
Right.
Especially when it comes to game design. I really like kind of discussing that kind of thing, and we kind of vaguely talked about some of this earlier, but I really like to see when AI gets really big into games. Because, like, as somebody who's a social gamer, according to some of the gamification theories and stuff that you had us go over in 100, I absolutely love AI in single player games that make me forget that I'm the only person playing. Because I've revisited Skyrim recently, and I couldn't get in it. Because none of the AI was intelligent, and it's just like, mixed with the gameplay for me, personally, not being super exciting, there really just wasn't that much there for me. And I think I've had discussions before on our stream about Chronicles of Illyria, and the use of AI in there in the way that's actually interesting is so wildly unexpected, really, because they're not talking about the AI they're using for their enemies or their NPCs. No, they're talking about the AI that they're using to determine weather and the general direction that the societies run by the players are going to go. So there's an AI keeping track of all the players and their actions and their quests and all that stuff, and it learns about what the players as a mass group of people are doing. And instead of these quests and stuff having a one-to-one development, the AI just takes in this information and changes the world and makes these things happen. Makes the political spectrum shift, makes the general kingdoms and where they are shift, and all that kind of really cool stuff. And that's like the wild AI stuff that you can put into an MMO. It's like, that makes it so much cooler.
That's the best thing about being a game developer, is that you
Some
have that
Russian
space
spies
to
sabotaged my phone.
simulate those things, right? You have the arena to simulate those things, right? As a game programmer, I can experiment all I want because it's not gonna hurt anyone, in the exterior world. It's
Yeah.
gonna be me playing around in my world.
Yeah.
And that's the best way to be creative, is to have an open space and you have no limitations, or you can, so your hardware is probably
Well, yeah.
a limitation, but
Well, you have
outside of
limitations,
that-
but remember, everything's smoke and mirrors.
Exactly.
You try to make them think that there's more to it than there is.
Right, so think outside the box, that's where you push yourself to the limits.
So I have a lot of random tidbits of information that I've kind of expressed multiple times in these streams. And I kind of want to point out for any designers, and I'd also like to ask if this is how you kind of see the world too, but ever since in high school when I started getting into the idea of game design, I really started looking at everything, and something that was said to me stuck. And it's just like, everything, I think this was an extra credits video, and everything in the world can be used in game design. Go out and travel. Learn an instrument. Do random stuff.
Gamification.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every single thing that I pick up, I can apply to a game. And it blows my mind how interesting the games get when I stop looking at games for inspiration and I start looking at other things.
Well, to be fair, you see it all the time anyways, right? You know, with credit cards, they have reward systems.
Yeah.
You know, stuff like that. Spend more money, get more money back, right? They get you to spend money and you're like, oh, it's rewards. It's the gamification of everything, right? And you see that everywhere. It's all over the place. So you're right, you can gamify pretty much anything when you think like that. But no matter what you do, like when I was doing art, pretty much only art when I was in the industry, you know, I'd drive down the street and I'd be like, how would I model that? You know, like how many polys is that made of? Oh wait, this is real life. You know, like you do kind of get into your work, start thinking through that. But what you were talking about before with the AI and things that are like weather changing and stuff like that, I was thinking about, they call this emergent systems, right? So there's all these systems that a lot of times in these open world or sandbox games, you just create these systems. So like once again, I'm playing Horizon Zero Dawn. So they'll have these systems that govern the NPC like enemies that are human. And then they have these systems that govern the robots, right? The dinosaur robots. And if they happen to walk next to each other, they start fighting. So I can see them fighting off in the distance. I don't have to do anything. I can go in there and just snipe them off and kill all of them, the dinosaurs and the people, or just the dinosaurs, or just the people, or whatever, just whatever. But they have these systems happening. That's what they call the emergent gameplay. The concept that things just happen in the universe regardless of whether you're interacting with them, because they have rules that govern themselves and how they interact with the other things, and you get very unscripted, more realistic concepts, and that's this AI that you're talking about.
It's actually weird, because the reason why it's impressive is because they do have that AI. But this AI that I'm talking about is one that manages those. It tries to read the setting and it changes those settings. So like, in a most basic sense, say there were multiple scouting parties from different factions and they encountered, during a peacetime in which the players representing the nobility of those factions are peaceful to each other, that AI flags them as to be peaceful to each other. But as soon as that starts to get messed up, that AI changes the flags of the emergent systems, makes them interact. The emergent systems are also wildly interesting. The weather systems, the various body systems, like one of their systems that isn't so much an emergent system itself, but is a result of being interacted with by a lot of different systems, emergent systems, is the character bodies change and develop over time. They age, they grow wrinkles, they grow fat if they sit around doing things. They grow different.
My AI made that happen.
Yeah, they grow different muscle patterns depending on what they do. Their diet determines if they're scrawny or big and that kind of thing. And they change. They also scar. There are things, your race determines various resistances to certain things, and there's a desert area, and a lot of people will go into that desert area, and their body will gain wounds from the sunburns and stuff if they're not prepared for that thing. And they'll scar if you're damaged, and it's a wild, amazing system. But it interacts with so many other systems, just with the bridges and stuff, and it's super interesting to see.
Well, you know, the thing is, there's AI in places you wouldn't expect. There's AI in the music. So nowadays they have the music. Have you ever noticed, like, you start fighting something and then all of a sudden the music changes and then you kill the last enemy and then you have this, you know, this little kind of outro kind of thing goes on. And it doesn't seem like a lot, but, you know, it's funny, I'm a huge video game soundtrack guy. I have like almost a terabyte of like video game soundtracks on my computer. Because that's what I have to listen to when I'm grading, because otherwise, like when I'm listening to lyrics, I start typing the lyrics in the grading box. I'm like, that's not what I wanted to say. It's gotta just be music, right? So I'm listening to this music. And I played this game called Quantum Break, and I really loved the music in the game. I'm like, man, this music's awesome. I want to get the soundtrack. So I find out the soundtrack only has like, the official soundtrack only has like 12 songs on it or something like that. And I'm like, well, there's a lot more music in the game than that. And I'm like, I love these, where's that track? And where's this other track? And so on. And so I go and I find a way to extract the music files from the thing. And I went in, I found, and there was thousands of them.
Are they
and then I realized they were all like, they were all 10 seconds or less.
Yeah.
Because all the music in the game, it just splices one, and depending on what's going on, how the action's happening, what's going on in the game, right? It just adds this one track, and then another track, and then next to it, and it sounds like one continuous track,
so
but they just
cool.
blend it all in, and I was like, well, that's kind of frustrating, because I wanted to have these long things, but the idea is it really, and you never notice, like as a player, it just gets you into it, but you don't notice, and that's kind of Sometimes the game stuff is a little thankless because your average person doesn't notice all the stuff. You know, it takes you a freaking month to model out this hallway and everything in it, and the player 3 seconds runs down.
Well, but at,
Right.
the same time they do though. Because if you really kind of look at the big picture, all of those like hours and hours of work that goes into something that I spend 5 seconds on, right? When you go into a setting that doesn't have that work put on those 5 seconds, it really, really.
It's still
pops out.
thankless, but I know what you're saying. What you're trying to say is that, you know, if you do it wrong, everyone notices. If you do it right, they just go, yeah, that's the way it's supposed to be, and it keeps their immersion.
And
Keeps them in the
then
game,
afterwards,
keeps playing.
though, if it is a fully immersed, if it is wrapped up and tied nicely, and all those like loops and little bits and baubles that you spent so long on, even though nobody specifically notices them, there really is just a general satisfaction about the experience. And I know this is kind of a way to avoid that thankless problem, but at least for me thinking about it, for me wanting to get into level design, I don't care if nobody notices like the set design. I do care if people get if people come out enjoying it because they felt the world was alive. Because people do kind of notice when people say the world
Oh,
felt
everything
alive.
works together,
Yeah,
like you're saying, yeah. Then,
When
obviously.
people say the world felt alive, they have no idea that they're talking about the little gold coins that were scattered around the table. But
Yeah.
like, if you kind of look for that in their compliments, it's kind of like they just don't realize.
Well, that is a big game design thing too, is understanding how everything comes together in the end. Because in you know reality, you have all these people working on the game. I mean, give you an example. Even Assassin's Creed Origins had 1,000 artists.
Right.
Right now, they don't have them on the list because
600.
they do a lot of outsourcing and stuff like that. But they had like 1,000 artists work on the game, and then obviously everyone's doing their own thing, but it has to come together. It's one of the game designer's jobs, right? The lead designer, right, to envision how it all comes together. That's not easy to do. Not everyone can do that, right? Some of the people are just, I'm doing my thing. That's it, and that's all they worry about. But they gotta see how that all comes together. So, you know, when I say thankless, I mean sometimes people don't notice. It's not that it's fully thankless. It was, you know, there was a time where I was out. You know, I'm out here in Arizona, right? And I worked on the game here in Phoenix, right, cars. And then I fly out to New York, where I'm from. I'm talking to my cousin at some restaurant, and I hear this guy talking about his daughter playing cars and how much she loved it. And I'm not talking to this guy. This is just a conversation I'm hearing. And I'm like, well, that's cool. He didn't say thanks to me personally, but there was some cool thing about it. Like, hey, I worked on that game. Of course, there was a time, though, I'd walk into like a Best Buy or something, and I'd walk up to the Cars game and be like, oh, yeah, I worked on that. There's like nobody there. I worked on this. I worked on this game. Please appreciate me. But anyway, yeah, I mean, there's different kinds of gratitude from a gamer, right? When the scores do well, that's all you care about, right? In the end, is that they enjoy the game and that kind of stuff. And it is how everything comes together. The ultimate point in a game is you don't want to go, oh, this was done by this guy and this person and this girl did this and blah, blah, blah. No, they look at it as one cohesive thing.
Right.
And when it all comes together and everybody's job is put together, then you analyze and look at it as a whole and go, hey, I really love this. And so, yeah, that is a pretty awesome feeling, you know, to know that you're on the other side of the country and someone's appreciating, you know, the game that you had worked on and stuff.
What's really messed up on my point of view, my perspective as a programmer, is that nobody ever gets to see the interactions that I come up with, right?
Yeah.
Oh, but they feel it.
Well, it's the
they
same
feel it,
concept, right?
But
It's important.
But they're like, oh, the designer did that. Like,
Yeah.
you know, the artist did that.
I know,
They
it's like when you
come to
show
life.
off your portfolio, like, hey, look at my code.
Like,
Is that
yeah.
exciting? Is that exciting, people?
Like-
Look at these things I
I
typed,
mean,
you know?
come
Like,
to
yeah,
life, so I
get
have
it.
to take all of the blame, none of the glory. And
Yeah.
that's okay.
Hey.
You know why? Because
Yeah.
when I see that game come to life, that's the
Your paycheck
satisfaction.
gets a good glory.
Well,
The fair
hopefully,
programmers make the most. Is that what
hopefully,
yeah.
hopefully the developers that you worked with at least are thankful for you doing all that stuff.
Sure.
Well, yeah, that's
Yeah,
where
yeah.
my gratitude comes from.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
the game actually being complete and alive.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
And
no, I know, I totally understand the programmer's plight, you know, when it comes to like trying to show off your stuff and people are like, you know, I was an artist
It's like,
too,
wow.
right? So I get to show off the art, people are like, that's so awesome, wow, and they're like, yeah, you're right, this guy, here's my programming, dumb. Right, I mean, give me another example. So when I graduated, they had 2 different votes on portfolios, right? And they had a vote called the peer vote, which was anyone who went to the event could vote on who they thought had the best portfolio in the show. And then they had a teacher voted portfolio one, right? And so I won the peer one, and this other student won the teacher one. And the difference was the one kid knew art and programming. And he's the one that the teachers go, oh, he knows everything, so he's design, art, and programming, bam, he's the best. But I showed off better, like my art looked better, it was more flashy.
Right.
And so the peer people, that's what they saw. They don't know anything about like what program or if I know programming. They're like, oh, his looks cooler, he wins, right? And so there is a public perception. But to be fair, you don't just do it for everyone going, hey, you know, whatever. You have to have a passion to be in this industry, just to make games or whatever. Some people appreciate it, some people hate it. This is the market we're in. No matter what you do, you can be legitimately perfect, and people still hate you. Right? And so there's really you're never going to please everybody. It's not about that. It's just about doing the best job you can and being proud of that, right? When you know you worked hard, you always feel good about it.
Right.
When you don't work hard, you don't feel too good about that. So that's really, you just do your thing right on the side. Sometimes everyone will say you're awesome, and sometimes they don't, but that's not, you don't necessarily need that, right? I think that's kind of like, to be humble is an important thing in the industry anyways. That's how you learn, right? Humility is where you go, yeah, I got work to do, and then someone tells you something to fix it, and you apply it. If you're not humble, then you don't apply it, and you don't grow, right? And then you don't last in the industry, because you have to keep growing and keep changing.
Exactly.
Well, so that was Mr. Markowitz, one of our game teachers, and
Get out of here now!
He talks
to us.
Not at all.
10 minutes left.
Oh,
10
okay.
minutes left?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought.
I feel like.
Oh, crap.
Should
Yeah.
we do another topic?
Well, I know I see another professor in here. If you have anything you'd like to say, if you have any topic you'd like to
You
bring
want to
up.
take the hot seat? It's literally hot now.
How'd you break your glasses?
It's called the baby.
Oh,
We
wait,
mentioned
no,
at the
no,
beginning
no,
of the
no.
live stream. It's already
Wait. Mistake. My phone is ahead by like 1
An
hour.
hour? Yeah,
Oh,
wow.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's fine.
It's alright, we can still swap and mark.
Yeah.
He looks better than me.
Yeah.
It's okay, they'd rather look at Mark
And we
anyway. Hey, you
actually
wanna
have,
swap
like-
in here?
Yeah, sure, I'll take it.
Alright.
For a little while.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Hello, guys.
Hello.
Okay, so now that the spy is gone, we can talk about
spy.
Russian engineered.
I'm still in the room!
Well, I know you as my dystopian humanities professor, but what else do you teach?
Sure, for whoever the 6 people watching the live stream.
5, actually.
5.
Close.
I'm Dr. Mark Smith. I head the business tech program. So I teach Business 200, or pretty much every business-related class in the university. I also teach graduate students. I taught Mark with.
Yes.
Wait,
yes.
you
When I took
went
my
here?
master's class, he was a teacher of mine. Yep.
What?
Yeah, Marco.
I got a master's degree here at UAT.
Yeah, Marco and
Oh,
George.
what the?
Marco and George were students of mine for a short duration.
Why is that funny?
I just think
funny.
of you like being so young, but like you're
Yeah.
you. So
Yeah.
Does that make me feel like older?
I don't know. I'm the
I
one
mean,
with
you've got
the
less
I'm
gray
the
in
one
your
with the
beard
gray in the
than him,
beard.
so
Yeah.
take that
Wait,
anywhere
so
else.
when he was in your classes, was he still like all like Patur Roberto and like doing all this
It's
shenanigans?
just he's being Italian, using my
Yeah.
hands. and
Yeah,
talking.
did he talk with his hands? Did he hit people?
Did he ever
Yes,
knock
yes.
over anyone's cupcake?
No, Markwood's Markwood, so he was,
Yeah.
him and George banter a lot. It's fun. It's a fun experience.
Yeah, we make fun of each other.
Yeah, it made the class lively. Otherwise, it would have been very, very boring, like most of the grad classes I teach.
Wow.
I'll sit there. You gotta have interaction. That's what makes the class good. This is great. Like you guys interacting with each other.
Yeah.
This is what we need in the classes. It makes them fun.
That's why Kevin's in there, so everyone
Yeah,
can
Kevin,
interact
you know.
and mess with Kevin.
Yes.
But no, I mean, yeah, I could banter about any topics you want to discuss. You guys were discussing games. I don't know much about.
Talk about movies.
Oh wait.
Oh yeah, we can talk about
Movies.
movies.
He's a movie guy.
That's my thing.
Well, let's see. Do we have any movie topics, Dooley?
Where's
Any topics?
Can you go back to the?
Didn't he have a quantum?
Well, I screened it because I'm a huge Mad Max fan. That's why I forced you guys to watch Fury Road. I
Oh,
shouldn't
yeah.
force you. Should want to watch that
Yeah.
movie.
It's been recommended to me. I just never.
Yes,
Well,
but
we
when
don't
I-
have bad news. We don't have a topic on movies, but we do have a topic that's based on a product. And you are a business teacher, right?
Yeah, I do
Oh,
product
okay.
development.
Oh, the excitement's
And you
gone.
are.
Why don't we
You
talk
are
about
right.
movies? Why don't we talk about movies for a little bit?
Yeah.
And we
Yeah,
move
go
on to
ahead.
that.
It's alright, no, we can talk about product development, like the little itinerary of things we need to discuss.
We
product-
don't have it. We don't have an itinerary. we have a list
about
of
this
things
boring
we
product
could-
now.
Yeah.
So what's the
Okay.
product that you're bringing
Okay, so it's Ooho.
up? Hulu?
Ooh. O-O-H-O.
What is that?
So it's basically this biodegradable water container.
Is it
The water you can eat.
Yeah, the water
Oh, the
you
one
eat.
that- for the
That's
sea-
called ice.
The sea level.
Everybody says that. Everybody says that.
It's true though.
Every time. It's
Make sure
like-
you don't freeze them, it would break the
That
membrane.
would be
Yeah,
tough
probably.
to ship if it was just a bunch of ice.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. No.
No, I know you're talking about it. It's so when it goes in the ocean, it could be it's edible to
Yeah.
the.
Well, there's nothing left of it.
There's no plastic. So
Yeah, it's
that's
it,
cool.
the
It's
membrane
better.
itself is edible. So really, if you just want to drink
Oh,
the water,
yes,
you
so
put it
you
in
put the
your
whole
mouth.
thing in your mouth and you can eat it.
Yeah, it can be
It's very
colored.
weird, yeah.
It's 5 times less carbon dioxide. It's better for the
Uh,
planet.
Alright, so just in a nutshell, they've been trying and pushing for the past like 25 years on trying to get something to replace plastics. And it all comes down to, when it comes to business, it always comes down to a cost. Because the major companies that bottle these things, like Mountain Dew, like Pepsi, and like the main distributors of most of the things that you consume liquid-wise, they look at just overall cost. And if you even raise that by a cent or two per
Then
can,
they're not-
Well, that's
they
a
don't
lot.
want to do it.
That's for some of them. Like I know if you raise an entire cent per can, that's like a 20% increase in the cost.
Yeah, and on a small, on a like a macro scale, it's not that big of a deal, but they take that crap to heart because they start looking at like their stock prices and overall profits and how much more they can screw their employees and stuff like that. And that's what it comes down to, and always has been for any of those renewable things. So it could very well work because looking at it in my mind, I'm like I can sell people a shit ton more soda without actually selling more soda because I can just encase this in a bubble thing and they'll just drink it.
And they'll just
But it depends on how much that casing costs and how easy it is to distribute, because that looks kind of delicate. So
And what liquids you put into it. I wouldn't be surprised if the carbonated drinks could not be put into that.
probably, I don't know how it's gonna hold.
Especially in heated drinks.
It's
Especially
Yeah.
because they're
It's
slightly
supposed to,
acidic,
yeah.
and it holds
It's
water
meant to be
heated.
bonded.
Well, not just that, but it's also got carbon dioxide, it's got a gas in it.
Yeah.
And the cans and bottles are sealed airtight in order for that not to come out. If that's
Yeah.
kind of like
Right,
weak,
you like
it'll
shook
just
it,
burst.
yeah.
yeah.
So there's a whole bunch of questions that go around. Is it a good idea? That's great, but is it applicable or practical to actually put out there for the public? Maybe. It just depends. There's a bunch of questions that go
Yeah,
into
and there's
that.
also the issue of what are we gonna use to carry all of this food? Because we can't put it in plastic, because
Yeah,
one,
it's-
that's defeating the purpose.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
not a,
okay.
it's a very fluid shape. And
Yeah.
It like, it's not safe just sitting in your pocket or something like that, like it would burst with the pressure.
Yeah, and then my question always comes down, it's gonna be cost of actually
It's-
producing it, like actually putting your products in it and then shipping it around, because right now they very much easily stack in milk crates, sodas and
Yeah.
cans, and they just send them out that way, and those are, you don't have to worry about heat with cans and bottles, they're perfectly fine, getting hot and cold, it doesn't make a difference, they're gonna hold out just fine. How that is, it's gonna have to be temperature controlled, it's gonna have to be sent out specific, it becomes a pain in the ass for a distributing company to look at that, and that's why they might use it as like a gimmick for PR purposes, but for like mass production, how are you gonna package and sell that? Like, how am I gonna buy that in a grocery store?
So that
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
kind of
Is
calls
it in
into
a
question.
bag? I don't wanna buy a bag.
I don't wanna buy a
Yeah.
bag.
Is that really
Bag of
an
water.
issue, that, not just specifically for that, but is that really an issue that encounters a lot of like newer tech? Like, I've heard, like for renewable energies and stuff, there's gotta be so many like, business applied like, grants and, tax forgiveness and things like that for if you're working on this kind of stuff, if you're working to, push forward this technology. Is that really mostly because it's not as cost effective otherwise as just continuing with what they're doing now?
It's a mix, alright, so in any type of business sense, in any business company that's intelligent, it's gonna look at the finance behind time value money comes into play, which means, is this initial investment today gonna be worth it 10 or 20 years down the line? It's a valid question, and a lot of renewable energies pitch that idea that, yes, the upfront cost is kind of scarce or scary right now, like, using like Solar City, that's a Tesla company, to put solar panels in your house, it's like a 15 or 20 grand investment. But if you look at the long term, it will produce more electricity than you'll actually consume. You actually will be getting a credit back at some point, and so there's like a break-even point for it. So the thing with companies is that a lot of them, it's tough for them to swallow change, one. And then two, they have to be like, is it worth it? Is it is it more profitable for us to make the switch now to this thing, or to just continually doing what we're doing? And a lot of them will take the latter because it's easier, it's quicker, and they don't have to worry about the conjecture. And also, if they're a publicly traded company, they have to worry about their stock moving up and down. And when they have to answer to their shareholders, which they don't like to, then they're like, well, we're doing this for this reason, they're not gonna sit well, and then it can cause a lot of conflict. So a lot of times they'll wait till like the last very minutes to do this if it's pushed onto them. So, which may or may not put the company out of business, but that's the risk that they're taking with it.
Well, like, even with, development, though, like, what, I remember, I think it was 10 years ago or whatever, hearing that, like, solar energy, a lot of people were projecting that this will be useful, but everyone was saying, yeah, but we're not gonna put any energy into that, because right now, we're losing money in any foreseeable future because of how expensive this is to install and how little it's worth. And a lot of people are like, well, you just gotta fund development, but there's not money in funding development.
No, there's not. I mean, there's an investment into it. If you can protect the intellectual property of it, then you can make good money on it. The reason solar is starting to get pushed now is because the panels have become more energy efficient. Like, before, if you paneled your entire house, you still wouldn't even be able to power it. But now they've gotten to a point where you can actually do it. And then also, what was an issue that Tesla has figured out and fixed is that when you generate this power, where does it go?
Yeah.
Like, because typically the way electricity works in your house is that power runs into something while it's operating and then it doesn't when it's not. So if you have solar panels that don't store energy, it's just gonna run your stuff in the daytime and then it's gonna die, and then you just SOL. So with the battery packs, it makes it available to actually store and use it, and that was one of the issues that they've solved. But I see solar eventually I see renewable energy having to take over. In my opinion, there's another revolution getting ready to work, a business revolution of energy. There's gonna be a giant fight and push for it. And so you're gonna see, like the SRP, the APSs, they've been dealing with renewable energies. They have this in their stockpile. They're just waiting until it's most profitable and feasible to push it out on people. And I see the consumer market is also pushing that faster because people are going out of their way and purchasing the solar panels and the renewable energies to work with their homes, and that loses money for those organizations because you're not paying into that grid anymore. You're actually like self-sufficient. So
Getting paid by it.
yeah, you're essentially getting paid by it. So they're eventually, you're going to see that become a thing just because it's become more cost-effective and it's more sustainable long-term. Because all energy companies do have the intelligence of knowing that most of the resources are finite, or most of the resources are kind of scarce in certain supplies. So they need to look for something that's easier to do. So you'll see it probably in the next like 20 years or so that will push hard, and you'll see like, the U.S. is kind of like a stick up the ass about progression. So you'll see this slowly, but
Through Norway and Denmark, yeah.
yeah, depending on how the progression goes, like you'll see eventually we'll get to a stage where we'll be like 50% renewable, then we'll get to 60, then we'll just push through, and then eventually, once we eventually cut off fossil fuels and nuclear and the rest of it, then you'll see all that go to the wayside.
China's being a huge contributor of this right now, so they've actually tried to switch over to,
Yeah, because they're losing the crap out of their most.
Yeah, because they're literally suffocating.
Yeah.
They're worse than we are.
Yeah.
And the good part about, I mean, like, I'll never say China's great, but one thing they're good about their specific setup is that when they make a choice and want initiative to something to happen, they're gonna make it happen because they're more of a command type economy. And then you see, yeah, the Denmarks, the Swedens, the more progressive countries, and the Netherlands, they are adopting this. I mean, certain countries are 100% recycles. I think Germany and a few others actually like import trash in order to burn and use it for power sources. We have a huge plastic issue here. So you'll see the push and progression, and then when the younger generations starts like to have more of a care for the environment and social empathy for others, you'll see a progressive push to all that stuff.
So I remember, I think it was 4 years ago, there were a lot of companies that I at least know, like Exxon and stuff, that are primarily built off of the oils and the gases and the refinement and that stuff. And they did a lot of kind of PR commercials or what have you, focused around the fact that they're developing into renewable. That kind of makes me think that they made those decisions not because it was monetarily effective on their own, but because the public perception was necessary. how much of public perception really affects a business and their day-to-day, like, is this worth doing decisions?
Well, a company of their size and nature, it eventually, they want a good press, they want a good press relevance in the community for the simple fact that consumers always do have a choice. And that's what it comes down to. Like Exxon, you know, almost all oil companies have a bad reputation just because of the industry that they're in, because they're in a fossil fuel polluting station. Oil spills happen, you know, the big BP spill, I mean, Deepwater Horizon was on downstairs, that's a real thing. It actually did happen, and it happened for the same reasons that they showed in the film, and negligence and greed. But, so initially you always have this bad stigma against them. So they'll do a PR saying they're trying to get into renewables, but also they are actually trying to get into renewables because they know that if their company is going to last forever, they have to, because there is only a certain amount of oil. And the more you pump out of the ground and the more you start digging, and you are destroying parts of the land, and eventually you could collapse certain areas and you could make it a very unstable area. So they know that their company has to progress and transition to something else. So they are actually heavily investing into renewables and getting into different industries and diverting their finances. But as of right now, they want to make sure that the public's okay because, I mean, petroleum goes into everything. Every plastic thing made is petroleum based. So if we as a public decide, you know, we are going to not use plastics for anything, then that's most of their money. I mean, we always bitch about gas prices, even though, just to let you all know, gas prices are not dictated by oil companies, they're dictated by our US government. So most of a gallon of gas does not cost that much, it's mostly US taxes that we pay on it. Drum of oil has not changed much over the 30 years span, but so anyway. But gasoline, like fuel industry for them is like 10-12% of their entire make. So yes, it's a big hit for them if we moved completely to fossil fuels, but it wouldn't end their company. But so they want to make sure that they're looking into other avenues to diverse, because as we look at different ways of not doing plastics, because there's no way we can biodegrade them or reuse them. Well, we could recycle, we're just lazy.
and to my knowledge at least, until the process is developed further, there's always development in the way for a lot of these things. Until the process is developed further, it's not worth it.
Yeah, but they want the public to be okay with plastics and be okay with their company in existence. No matter if it's a more manufacturing-based or an organization, everyone has a consumer touch. And we always have, because we live in a capitalistic society, we always have a personal choice. So if we all decided that we were not going to buy smart water anymore, there was another bottle that was made out of that material that can be eaten by animals.
Oh, algae.
Yeah, then they would be like, what are we supposed to do? But if you think about it, like the medical industry uses all plastic stuff. I mean, the syringes and all that stuff are plastic based. It's very hard for us to transition away. It's more feasible for us to go into recycling. And if we go into recycling, then we need less of the plastic products. So they see that as well. So it's always going to be this. We want the public to be okay with our company in existence because we don't want bad public relations for various reasons. One, yeah, the public can make choices of not purchasing their products. There are other oil companies, we could go use somebody else's. And then two, you also got to think that people get employed by these organizations, and do you want to work for somebody that's terrible? No, unless you have to. I mean, that's why people work at Walmart.
You've mentioned that before. What's your beef with Walmart?
Before you
I'm actually kind of curious.
Oh, we do have a
Okay,
question.
so Jordan asked, do you intend to repeat the dystopian humanities course in the future semester?
It doesn't. It's not in the schedule for fall, but we were hoping to. Like, the goal is that class would take over for the Walking Dead course and eventually be like a class in the academy.
Walking Dead course.
Yeah, we had a Walking Dead course for quite some time. We also had a Breaking Bad class before too.
Why?
I have to say personally,
Why?
I would recommend.
What do you mean, why not?
I would recommend
That show is dead.
dystopian as an elective to anybody I talk to. It's really fun.
Sweet. Well, I'm glad you like it.
Well, you also teach SIP, or
Yeah, I
you're in
teach-
charge of that course, correct?
Yes.
So what do you think a student that is coming here is going to be facing whenever they hear SIP?
That was a scary thing for me when I first came.
Yeah,
Well,
it's still
it should
scary
be.
to me,
It
honestly.
goes from, alright, so there's two perceptions of Student Innovation Project, or what we call SIP, right? There's a perception that us faculty have as this thing that's not, it's not a huge deal if you do it correctly and aim at it right. And then there's this student perception that's scared to death of this thing that they don't quite understand what they're doing. And I think that's the disconnect that I've been trying to solve and complete through SIP 311. And with the subject matter experts like Matt and Derek and Hugh's help, making sure the students have a very good, clean-cut understanding of, like, I'm going this direction. Because, yeah, when you hear it, like, you have to create something new, you're like, oh shit, I have to make something new?
Right.
I don't know what I'm gonna do. And then you start to, like, dig through, wade through that crap, and you're like, okay, I get it. I need to make a new mechanic. I need to find something niche. I need to see where I can make something better. And then that becomes more feasible. So for a new student coming in, one, you have time to figure it out. And then two, it's finding a problem and solving it at the basis of it. That's the simplicity of it. And the whole purpose of it is to complete something.
I've found, usually
I
for me.
don't know if I could cuss on this, so I'm not.
Oh,
we're
no.
gonna
on it, so it's
Well,
It's already.
I know for me, when I was first getting pitched, I don't think I was at a UATX setting, but it was a tour, so it might have been a UATX, but I just wasn't aware. But during that, I remember Mr. Bowman speaking to all of the prospective students and explaining generally one of the big selling points of the degrees here is the SIP and that kind of thing. And the way it was explained, where it was like you have to do something entirely unique that's never been done before, and that kind of thing. And it's really kind of a scary thing, because it's like, when you're told that, right after being told that this school has been doing that for like 4 or 5 decades now,
Something like that, yeah.
hearing that is like, how can I possibly come up with something that has not been done before, not only just in general, but especially not here. Especially hearing all the stuff that they're saying.
Right,
Oh,
it's
cool.
advancing technology.
Yeah. It's really scary, because like,
What do you want from me?
I feel like I'm 5 years behind this school
For sure.
just stepping in here. How am I supposed to be ahead of it?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. And it's just such a scary thing.
For me, it's like, I heard the horror story of one person that got rejected. You probably know who I'm talking about. I'm not gonna drop any names, but one person got rejected for like that for SIP.
This round?
One person?
One person.
Was it where's the horror story?
Rejected.
Okay, that's the horror story. Multiple times.
Oh, how many times?
Yes.
I don't know.
Oh, okay, so
Again,
many
you know,
times.
from the teacher perspective here, I do tell students to recognize this is the hardest thing you're supposed to do here. That's the point of it. It's
Yeah.
supposed to be hard, but the reason is because that's better than your cornerstone project you do, right? Like a lot of other schools have what they call a capstone project, which is a really good thing. Here we want you guys to innovate. Innovation is hard. It is a little scary, but the truth is, isn't that college in general? And when
Yeah.
you overcome that, aren't you now the person you wanted to be when you came here? So the whole thing is, if it's not scary, it's not hard, well then why are you wasting your time doing it?
See, but there's like a
Wait
So
a minute.
Matt's
Because you're
done,
not learning.
Matt's done with the soapbox.
I am never done with that.
He carries a soapbox on his back pocket, like.
He's right though. I mean, I always try to paint
It's
it
like
in a light
preaching
of
over there.
it's feasible, because I know that when a lot of instructors talk about it being like it needs to be hard, it does need to be difficult, but you set the bar of how difficult and how I guess evasive this needs to be. All right, we have some students that go really robust with it and actually do stellar work and make products and services and come up with really cool stuff. We also have some students that find a small niche and they correct it. It doesn't mean that those SIPs are better than one another, it just means that they approached it a different manner. And so, I mean, yeah, it's going to be difficult because you have to think and you have to actually use problem-solving skills and apply it, and you have to actually complete something. But, I mean, you should have the skill sets and knowledge base to do it. It's just finding the project and doing it. So, it shouldn't be scary, it should be more fun. So I don't want any new students or any of you guys that are actually going through it. I mean, it can be, especially if you're a gamer in the game group, I can understand it being stressful because that group is very ridiculing, and so they should be. I made it up.
It's kind of, English is good at making it
Well, here's the
worse.
thing though, is even though it's hard, you're supported. That's the reason why you go to college, is you get a support system. It's gonna be hard, but you're not doing it by yourself.
Well, I think that's
Right,
something
you're
that's
being
not
supported, so we
emphasized.
help you guys figure it out, right? We do say no a lot through the first pitches, but that's not because we hate you and you got horrible ideas, right? It's just because we want you to be proud of it. I had teams come back 2 or 3 times, and now they're really proud of what they came up with,
Not just that,
because
but
they put effort into
they
it.
also want to set you up for success, because if you go to them, if you're a 2-person team going to them wanting to make out a full flushed out game, that's
Too big of a
it's
scope.
too big. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
unrealistic. I mean, but if you feel like if you come with a really good idea and like this is the main innovation mechanic or what I want to do, and then hopefully we can get into production studios and make it a full-on game, then they'll be more appeasing to understanding and listening to what you have to say. But if you come to them, you're a one-guy shop saying, I want to make this game that does this,
I wanna make
this,
an
this.
MMO.
Yeah.
Toning down scope is the first thing we always do.
Yeah, that's
Well, another thing that I think isn't emphasized or isn't even said, at least when I was there, and this is 2 years ago, but I didn't know until I was talking to people about it that there are actually, that not only is SIP a credit, like it's not just a thing that you have to do, but it's actually it's actually a class you go through, it's multiple classes.
Yeah.
And that lack of information, like knowing that now is really relieving to me because I know that at least it's not something that I have to do on top. It's something that's part of it, it's built in, and there are times and people dedicated to helping me do that. And I did not know that. It sounded just like, to graduate, you had to also have this done, and for all I knew, that wasn't even a credit. That was just something that I had to
This
do
is something
on my
that-
own time.
I want you to make
and have it
Facebook
done.
in your dorm room.
Right,
and
yeah,
your
right.
job.
That's what it sounded like vaguely, especially with some of the examples where they gave, they gave no context to how this happened. They just said that here's one of the SIPs. This guy made a prosthetic entirely 3D printed. It's like, wow, he had a lot of spare time, didn't he? It's like, and it's just one of those, they can't possibly tell you everything in one of those like half-hour briefings of everything you're gonna do here. But it's one of those things that like finding out sooner than later is a lot nicer.
We could paint a better picture, but I tried to do it in SIP 11 is trying to like tone it down as far as the scaring factor that goes.
Oh,
into
so
it.
you're the guy that calms everybody down.
Well, I mean,
Okay.
honestly, going through your class, the one relief I did have was just speaking to you after facing the judges, because like the judges go rough,
Yeah, they
and
do.
you were kind of like there, like it'll be okay.
Don't worry, good cop, bad cop thing. I'm the bad cop.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. We'll take care
Because
of
then
you.
he sits there's like, but you gotta take what they said. Like,
Yeah. Like, there's another semester. Think about it.
Well,
Well,
like the ones that just went through the SIP pitch this time, which was last week, I said the same thing to them. It's like, because the game group like always happens to it. I prep them for it. I say they're gonna be digging in. Take it with a grain of, don't take it with a grain of salt, but listen to what they have to say. And none of the professors want to tell you no. They want to help you get to where you need to, which is true.
And then you get there and they're like, no.
No, they don't do that.
I say a lot more than no.
They don't. I've really rarely have had projects where the game group or any of the groups have just been like flat out, no, this sucks. Do not do this. I think it's
I did it twice.
Yeah, I mean,
Two times, and I've teached for 5 years.
I've only seen it happen twice in my entire time here. And it was for good reasons, because it just was an idea that was really, really far out of the scope
Oh,
and prospect of it.
wait a minute. Are you talking about the Netflix but for games thing?
Anyway.
That's what I was talking
That's
about.
very too pinpointed, so no.
come on, dude.
That
Yeah,
was my
he's
whole
working
time.
on it, chill.
It's picking something that's not too feasible for you to actually complete, and there's a whole mechanism that goes behind it for financing and figuring it out and setting that stuff up that's just not gonna happen.
That was the horror story that I was told.
Well, then that's
You
not
can't
worth
go,
it.
it's like we were talking about renewable energy. The thing is, it's like with a SIP, sometimes students come in and be like, I'm gonna create a renewable energy source. And like the idea is like, well, that would be really innovative, you're right. But you gave us no plan. And this is what he's talking about, is he's talking about sometimes if you have an idea, we're not saying the idea isn't innovative. We're saying you didn't actually have an actual plan to get to that point. You don't really know how you're gonna do it, you're just saying I'm going to do something.
Right.
Yeah.
You come into SIP saying, this is what I'm gonna do and here's my plan. That's what we're looking for. If you don't have a plan, an idea is not very useful.
No, and then they'll do their best to try to help you obtain a plan of action to get there if it's feasible to do. Because like I said, I don't know all the majors that well, so I can't speak to every single little thing about, especially when it gets to the game stuff. Because I mean, I stopped playing video games after PlayStation 2, so I don't know.
Hey,
Cars was on PlayStation 2.
Yeah, I never.
At least you had your hands on the best
Yeah,
console.
I agree. I never got into like
Shade.
online gaming or any of that stuff. I really don't like playing with others when I play video games, so I don't. The online mechanism just makes me like I don't.
I can
wanna deal
empathize with
people.
you, Natasha, anybody who teaches those SIP stuff, because you're right, you have all these different degrees. It's tough when you get all of these different degrees in different subjects and you're just trying to find this common ground with all of them. It's not
Yeah,
an
and
easy
they'll
job.
ask me like, "Is this idea innovative?" I'm like, "It sounds like it."
You're gonna have to check.
It's like
with
network
your-
security.
I always tell them,
What?
like, you should, like, me and Natasha really push, and any teacher that's taught SIP always pushes, like, within the first few weeks, you should be actively engaging and talking to your subject matter expert faculty about your idea.
Yes, Miguel.
Because they need
Yeah.
to help shape it as you go, and if you wait to the last minute, like a lot of these students do, then you get told, you know, not a no, but you get told a soft yes, but you need to work on some other things. That sounds, in a lot of students' minds, it sounds like they got rejected. And I'm like, no, getting rejection is getting rejection. I mean, I'm sure all of us have felt rejection, maybe more than others, but
When you try to date, it happens a lot.
Come up with a new idea is a lot different than improve your idea.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So if you get told not, if they don't tell you to, like, no, you need a new idea, then you're good. Then just take the win and walk away.
Right.
But anyway, but that's SIP in a nutshell, and it shouldn't be scary, it should be fun, interactive, and knowing that you have an entire field of faculty that want to help you through it. Like, I know it never happens, but I've never seen a faculty member turn away a student that was asking for help on their SIP, or asking for some guidance or some questions. That's why you come here.
Yeah.
If you go to ASU, you're not approaching your professors.
Oh, shade,
they're off
shade.
campus as soon as they can.
You're talking to
that's
their
a verbal
you're talking
war
to
right
their
there.
TA that might know something or two. But anyway, but I'm just saying, like, you don't stress about it. You should enjoy it and look forward to it, because the SIP and portfolios, typically students that are going through their grad programs have to do stuff like this, not bachelor's level. Typically, bachelor, you might do like a thesis at the most, and that's just a lot of writing about bullshit.
Yeah.
I wrote a bunch of them, so I know. But
Yeah, I did. One of the reasons I did come here is that if there wasn't a thesis paper, it was a make something.
Exactly.
Yeah,
This
that's what I liked
school,
about the masters here.
God.
Okay.
I got my masters here too, same thing.
so that's huge here, right? It's
Thank
like,
God.
this school is project-based.
And you make
Everything
stuff.
is project-based.
I've first term.
do you want your
I
seat back? I got
made
somebody waiting on me downstairs.
No, at 2 o'clock we're at the whole faculty.
Yeah, yeah.
meet the thing.
We gotta.
That's in 10 minutes.
Oh, okay. All right, well, thank you, Mark, for
problem.
your
Thank you very
time.
much.
Thank you for
Coming in?
Thank you for,
sharing your knowledge.
you know, destroying all the fear.
We'll
And
get
all
your
the
beef
things
on
in the back
Walmart
of my
next
head.
time.
Oh, I'd love to talk about that.
Yeah.
And Amazon, they're both lumped together now.
Oh,
So.
God.
Oh.
All right.
Oh my God. Are you leaving too?
Yeah, I have to.
Can't
Wow.
take over the
2
world.
We
o'clock.
have
Employees
the
are
teacher
trash.
meet the
That's how it
teacher
works.
thing down.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Nice.
okay.
How are you?
Well,
Thank you for sharing your time.
Do
with
have
us.
fun. Thank
Carry
you
on,
for your
guys.
time.
Keep it up.
thank you.
Sure.
Those of you who are here, in 10, actually 8 minutes now, there's going to be the teacher faculty thing. So by all means, go to that, because all of the professors that I've met here are awesome. They really are. And
Definitely want to see that. Well, when will we stop streaming? And
2:30, we've got an hour and a half.
So let's pick in.
Actually, no, we've got half an hour.
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
I'm bad with numbers. Leave me alone. I'm an artist,
My
not a
husband-
programmer.
It was right there. Wait a second. 2 o'clock plus an hour.
I woke up at 7.
Well, we might have
Leave
time
me
for
alone.
like 2 more topics. So what else do we have to talk about?
We have a lot. Okay, so we have a Russian engineered malware on routers.
Oh, I love
Do I
Russians.
know the Russian
Let's
side?
talk about Russians.
Let's go into.
I live in America.
There's also
That's reason enough.
the boring company's next big contract with Chicago.
We've given Elon enough time.
He's had
He's been the
we've had
spotlight
enough
of it
Iron
all.
Man.
He hasn't
He's been in
delivered
the
it,
but I'm really excited to see where he actually goes with it.
I like
The GDPR policies. So you know all those policies that have been happening, like companies sending you emails like we updated our policy.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
the topic about that.
Yeah.
And also, rip. Did we touch
Yes.
on Norman?
Yes.
We talked about Norman.
Yes.
Yeah, we talked
Okay.
about him.
On AI, yeah.
So Norman's out of there.
Yeah,
Oh
that's
yeah, we never talked about this. Backpage.
it.
Yeah.
Page and crack. I think we should do Russians.
Russians?
Russians.
We're all good for Russians? I love how you just defaulted to Russian. As soon
Look,
as you
man,
heard
that's
it-
an interesting topic. Russians are weird.
As soon
Well, the Slavic people are wonderful.
We're not gonna
and
judge. We're not gonna judge.
as I love
We're
how
just stating facts now.
like if I stated that last, he would have just waited and been like, Oh
Russian.
No, okay.
Oh, that's the best stuff, and I love that.
So
Okay,
the
no,
Russian
I
development
want-
on
on routers, there's a lot of, okay, so recently, there have been some recalls for routers and modems, because apparently they figured out that there was Russian malware on their routers, and they were just doing whatever. And they were just doing whatever, like these Russian hackers were just, I don't know, what's the name for it? What's the
So
name
were
for
they the trapdoors, Trojans?
Yeah, stuff like that. But to normal people's routers, it wasn't like government based or anything.
They were just doing it.
They were just doing it, which was weird. It's like, what was the end goal?
What were
And-
they doing?
Okay, from my understanding, it was like, I don't know what their goal was, but like the actual software they put on there was pretty much hard coded to redirect. It had the ability to redirect traffic to a specific like website, to like a
That's
port.
weird.
And it could also block certain connections.
So they
So it was sort of controlling almost like the firewall aspect with the routing.
Were
Yes,
they trying to get
but-
people to go to a
I
So
don't-
site?
what
no,
problem
okay, so-
did you get
I
at?
don't know too much about it, but
yeah,
like
that's what I'm saying.
the
Like, how can you
NSA,
extract
like,
information out of that?
Well,
the
not
NSA
even if it's
instantly
information.
blocked the
What
website.
what do they gain? Where do they
Information,
gain?
of course,
Well, not
like-
necessarily. They could also be trying to control server traffic so that they can make money off of it. But
Can you not do
Can
that with
you do that?
emails?
that's
And
not what I'm
exploiting
talking
We
about.
could have just asked our government for it.
Well, I'm talking about that. He was saying that they were adjusting like the port connections, right? And that also
Like
that
they
adjusts
had the ability to point traffic
that
towards
that
But what
adjusts
was the
what
end
your
goal?
yeah. That's the question. Are they
ask
making
them.
maybe they had investments in
Russians.
certain server areas and they were just making
don't
money
know.
by higher traffic? Like what was happening there?
Were
They just preparing to eventually seize all of our computers and make Russian music over them? Like,
they were gonna like redirect everything to like Kitten Moors and
yeah.
Yeah, imagine like all at once, everybody's computer just goes to rah rah Rasputin.
But no, imagine
that
that
troll
real
America
no.
simultaneously.
Real
Oh my God.
conspiracy moment here, alright? Take this with a grain of salt that I don't believe it. But imagine if their plan was to actually get that on every single like connection possible
Oh my
to a
God.
point to where they could just press a button and just every screen attached to the internet suddenly goes to a point in which it's a streamed video, like Russia's saying something. Like some declaration of war. or
Oh,
some shit.
imagine.
That would be some mind-boggling, like, fear-mongering shit. That would be some powerful terrorism.
What would
If
they even do
Putin
with
just
that?
pressed a button and all of the screens
Well-
turned to a live stream of him, and he just said, "Okay, I'm going to nuke the U.S. and you cannot stop me." Like that.
Oh
like,
my God.
Like fucking wild like
But that'd
that.
be like a power play. I mean, like
Yeah, I know
Well,
that's
that
the point.
example.
That's the power play. It would instill so much
Fear.
Cause like at that point you're in everything. If you can do that with a press of a button, you can also just deactivate shit.
Okay, so here they mention like cyber activities, exploiting the information that they're collecting through cyber activities. So if you had like data,
Well, it's more so like statistics of where you're going and why.
okay, so collecting all of that, can they find anything out?
I mean, they can generally find out where you are if they were going for like.
well, they're just getting routers, so everything that you're doing at your home. So they're not talking cell data,
Yeah.
unless you're using your router with your cell phone, because people do that.
which still wouldn't give you like location. It would just give you like your
It would give the ISP which they could backtrack to a location, but
right.
really,
So they wouldn't even
the
have to
big
cell phone.
another thing, a more reasonable thing, less conspiracy that I could possibly see happening is they were trying to see if they can figure out a better way to get payment information by getting in that router. So like every payment or transaction you do through that router, they get that info. Maybe it's encrypted, but if they can figure out how to decrypt it,
Wow.
especially if they brag
Actually, he's got a
to
point. If it's not for government, it's either for fun or for
Hello.
Yeah.
What are you guys talking about?
Right now, we're talking about
Russian
the
spies.
Russian
Russian
hackers in our
malware on
routers.
routers.
the malware.
Would you like to sit down and bring up something, Ashley?
Alright, well, I'm sure you guys aren't gonna be surprised of the topic that I would love to discuss.
Okay.
Job search!
Well, that's actually a good thing to end on, because we've got half an hour left, and that's a good
Yeah,
subject.
yeah.
Alright, well, I have a session starting in 10 minutes on career services. So my session, right, you come in and I have a PowerPoint and it says job search, but it's flipped upside down. Any guesses why I would do that?
To make a statement?
That is exactly right,
To instill
Nicholas.
fear
I
into
mean,
us and
Because
to
It
make
stands
us
out more. You're like trying to read it because you're like, oh, that's upside down. Oh, this is job search.
like,
maybe
To
because
make
it's
you
a,
pay attention?
it's a
obvious,
confusing
but
and
we
weird
don't
method.
want. I don't know.
Wait, that's the grab attention, isn't it?
Wow, I mean, all of these answers
Are you polling
bad.
us for something to tell
Yeah,
me?
what
Are
are
you
you
still
doing?
trying to think of a reason to why you
There you
did
go.
Maybe for inspiration.
Yeah, yeah.
Sure.
So he came in here is like, I need to pose this to somebody so that they don't know that I have no idea.
Upload it upside down.
Yeah.
So all of those reasons, and because I like to flip my job search on the head, right? So instead of starting with my past experiences and my skill set and what I've done in kind of like a normal trajectory of a job search and a career, I start with my goal and then I work backwards from it to develop a plan, right? So I started my career in sports marketing, and then I kind of had a quarter life crisis.
I see it pretty often nowadays. Quarter
What
life
am
crisis.
I
Yeah, not,
doing?
like, it's-
I'm not fulfilled. Like, I mean, the Harlem Globetrotters, it's a great organization, but I was bored, you know? So I said, all right, what are the things that I care about? What do I spend my time reading and researching about? And I narrowed it down to 3 different things. The first one being the Middle East, and I have a hard enough time learning Spanish, and I'm a white girl from Kansas, so I don't think I'm gonna make many changes over there, right? The next one being the justice system. I just watched my significant other spend $250,000 in 3 years of his life going to law school.
Oh.
What
Was
goes
it
into
fun?
student
Well,
debt?
that's there is so much other stuff you have to do to build up to that though. Like,
And it's not for me. And so the third one was higher ed, and I said, all right, I'm gonna work in higher ed, and I didn't know what capacity. So being in Arizona, I looked at the super large local state school because I had never heard of UAT before, and said, all right, how can I get a job at ASU? So I went on ASU's website, and I found a marketing job that sounded like a great fit for me, and in the job posting it said you'll report directly to the program director. So I went on ASU's website and I found the program director, an awesome guy named Brian, and I wrote a killer cover letter. Brian's contact information right on the website. I sent him an email, said, hey Brian, can I buy you a coffee sometime so we can chat about ed tech and teacher retention in Arizona?
Right, so that was your
How
strategy.
could you say no to that? So me and Brian had a fantastic conversation, and Brian pushed me past HR, and I would have never made it past HR if it wasn't for Brian. So trying to backdoor your job searches, right? Follow the rules, apply online if you find a job posting, but
Build
then
relationships.
We don't stick just
Yeah.
to conventional.
Send,
Wait a
send,
minute.
send your stuff through the front door, but make
Yeah.
sure you're knocking on the window behind.
Wait a
us.
minute,
Going
you
through.
said backdoor,
Yeah.
so hack the job.
No.
I know what you mean.
Alright, I mean,
Gotcha.
So
okay,
you
yeah.
said you
Yeah.
knew you wanted to do Middle East law or higher ed.
Yeah.
Was it always just marketing?
Well, I mean, I ran the career services program here for 2 years, and I built that from scratch here. So I just knew I wanted to be here in some capacity.
Right.
So back to the job at ASU, it was more of it turned out the job was more of a sales job. So 3/4 of the way through that interview process, I said, you know what, Brian, I think you need a former teacher in this role, and that's not me. But man, you guys could really benefit from a strong writer on your team. Here's some cool tweets that I composed in your brand voice, and here's how I would edit this blog post for SEO purposes and add some links and some flair to it. And I said, well, geez, and they ended up creating a job for me that didn't exist before. And while I was still in school, I studied sports marketing, right? Another really niche topic. Didn't like anything I saw on the job board, so I researched the local sports radio station. Again, wrote a killer cover letter, and then picked up the phone and convinced the marketing director to create an internship for me. And he was like, well, I didn't know I needed an intern, but alright. And they paid me in beer and baseball tickets. It was awesome.
Oh, so I'm hearing a lot of be proactive and write killer cover letters.
Yeah.
Gosh,
And-
Okay, so here's a personal question. Alright, so did you learn more on the job or by yourself? Were you like learning what you were good at on a job that you weren't like necessarily focused on as making a career? Or were you at home just like, I'm just writing, like, am I good at this? Do I draw on the wall and see what I come up with? Like, what were you
And
doing?
expanding on that question,
Yeah.
like how much did you sort of overlap was there between what you studied in school and actual job application?
Sure. So I learned how to write in high school from Craig Ewing. He was also the soccer coach, so I already had an in right there, you know. But I didn't know anything. I mean, I understood basic grammar, but I didn't understand how to write in a captivating way, how to engage a reader. He really helped me understand the value of a hook. So just like how a journalist would use that to engage a reader, you need something like that in your cover letter. So I read a lot of student cover letters that start off like, my name's Ashley and I'm a graduate of KU and I want to work at your,
It's
right?
bland, they don't
It's
stick
going
out.
in the trash. So here's an example of a really strong opening. My greatest accomplishment didn't start with a business plan. It started in a dumpster.
See, because then you want to read the whole
This is
thing.
like,
You want to know how did that happen.
What
you
is
know?
this person talking about?
And if anything, even if they don't have a very impressive resume, you'll remember.
Yeah.
Just because of that.
See, you're describing, and this is kind of my inner nerd talking, but you're describing your story is like the D&D character with a 20 charisma. you walk into a kingdom and convince the king that he owes you money, right? That kind of thing. It's like you're like this kind of like chaotic good, like I want a job here, so not only am I gonna apply normally, but I'm gonna convince you that you've been looking for me the whole time.
Exactly.
Right? And I kind of the networking, and you put this forward in English 101 in the lab time a lot, and that is such a daunting task. Like you make it sound so easy to be so
There's a lot of
charismatic.
introverts.
But
Well, for
it
the
is
introverts at
so
this
de-
school,
oh,
it's a
definitely.
little different.
How do we
Yeah, but
so
this is
hard?
on a piece of paper in your computer.
But that's
you're
still,
writing.
but that's still such a thing. Like there's still charisma involved there, right? Like the people who put
My
in,
writing
like,
is introverted.
even you telling, like in English 101 when you write a cover letter, don't start out with "Hi, I'm so and so. I'm a such and such, and I want to do this at your company." Right? Like even not saying to do that, when I sit there and when I try to write a cover letter, it's like when my thought process for writing is what am I trying to get out of this? What am I trying to ask for? What is trying to happen here? And out of that introduction, all I can think of is, "Hi, it's me. I'm Nicholas. I'm a student here at UT." It's like, wait, no, that's exactly what I've been told not to do. And I cannot think of anything
Okay,
else to
so-
say.
So
Take-
then,
And
brainstorm.
boom,
then
right.
there's the
Brainstorm.
networking.
Okay,
Um,
wait, hold on the cover letter. So, my background, my educational background's in journalism, and there's different tracks within the journalism school at KU where I went, and I went the advertising route, and we would play this game called the 100-word game, and you would choose you'd have your product there, and you'd literally write 100 words about that product. So challenge yourself to
Is
write
it like
100
trying to
words
sell
about
the
you.
product?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and you're trying to sell yourself. And then some of those words can spark other ideas. Think of challenge yourself. How can you tell a story in 2 sentences?
Imagine like the worst person at it. It's like
But those are such good writing.
Well, come
exercises, too.
see me. I'm still here. I'm just
There you
upstairs
go.
Yeah.
Tell them
now.
where you're at and where they can find you.
I am upstairs in the president's office. Oh, hello. And I'm in the marketing department, but I'm still a resource. And James, the new career services guy, he has also created opportunities for himself. He's that Australian chap running
I
around. So.
wish he was able to make it. He was supposed to talk to us today, but he didn't make it. We didn't get to meet James.
Well, let me see if I can go find him and put him up here, because I have a session right now, but
Right.
this is fun, and I'll be
Well,
back.
that-
So
Well,
about
to my knowledge, we're wrapping up at
Alright.
2:30, but you know, maybe next time there's a UATX will last longer.
Yeah.
Do some after event stuff. maybe.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
can
that'd
dig
be
it.
good.
Alright, well, let me see if I can grab him, alright?
That'd be awesome.
Alright, guys.
Thank you.
Alright,
Thanks for coming in.
So that was
Wait a minute.
actually
You know what I just realized?
what?
She walked in,
Yeah,
told us how to advertise ourselves,
yeah.
and then she
Advertise
advertised
herself.
herself.
That's her
Well,
job.
no,
That is
she
her
came
job.
in
Convinced us
and
that we-
manipulated all of us.
Yeah.
She honestly, she gets you in English 101. Like she really
God.
does. When she's the one running the lab, she gets you in, like, if you're in any way interested in getting, like, one of the selling points to coming here is all the job resources they offer you as a graduate, as an alum, and she gets you, like, if you're in any way excited about that, she's like, well, I need to talk to her right now. And it's like, I was like that too in my first term. I was like, the first week, I walked up to her, I was like, okay, how do I do this? Like, what do I gotta do?
What
She's
does
like,
this
oh, do all this.
mean?
And like halfway through the term, I was freaking out because I had forgotten that I'm literally a freshman, first term into college.
Yeah.
Right? And I was just focused on, I need an internship next week.
Yeah.
I need fucking job proposals. I need to be best friends with the lead developer in Blizzard. Like, all these things, and I'm forgetting.
In all
I am
actuality,
3
I don't
years
even
away.
know how to do what I
Exactly.
came here to do.
Yeah, it's like, wait, I forgot I don't have a resume.
Finding out like what I want to study here, I'm like, oh, internship, I should put that like right here. You know,
Yeah.
I want to get some experience. I'm like, actually, I don't know.
It's like, oh, I was like, what are you studying? It's like, oh, great. So how many years are I'm a freshman. It's like,
Yeah,
what?
I was gonna say,
What do you know how to use?
I went to high school.
Yeah.
You ever heard of
No,
MS
she's
Paint?
great.
Yeah,
I know how to
she
use
is
that.
great.
We'll have to
Very
stop
nice.
work. I had a question about networking because, again, along with the charisma thing, I have found that networking is really hard when you are not a charismatic person.
Okay.
Like, she makes it sound so simple. It's just, oh, invite them out to coffee or call them up. It's like, the hardest part for somebody who's not charismatic is like, you feel the need to have a reason beyond why you really want to talk, right?
Yeah.
And like, charismatic people are able to approach and tell you exactly what they want from you, and you're like, that sounds like an awesome idea.
Yeah.
But if you're not charismatic, it at least sounds like to yourself
And there are definitely
that you're just coming off annoying, right? Because I know I have internships, and if I feel I have the phone number to the guy,
Right.
but until I have something that I feel like is valuable for his time, I feel like I have no reason to call him. And I know that I could probably, if I was back to my nerd talking, if I got a good charisma check, I could get him to talk about fucking anything.
You know what's
But like,
funny?
it's so hard.
You know what's funny? You know how many times I've landed a job because I was trying to annoy somebody?
What?
And I ended up getting a job. And I was
What?
like, wait.
See, but that's part of you, though. Like,
Wait, so
That
no,
is
explain that
you.
in more depth. Because
Okay.
my images are going out in front of this McDonald's and you're just throwing tomatoes at the managers like, fuck you! And then like 3 weeks later, like, you want a job?
No, because like, okay.
Spitballs going, we need more of that guy.
No. Okay, so ShopRite, right? Back in New York.
Okay.
I did not know that this guy at the movie theater was the manager of ShopRite, right? And I was just trying to be a dickhead. Because
Okay, hold on.
Wait.
One, Ramadan, but two.
No, Ramadan's over.
No, we're still online. Remember?
Oh yeah! Oh my god, I'm sorry everybody. I've soiled it.
Anyways, continue.
Anyways, so
Um,
I forgot what movie was I watching?
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
So I went there and I was going on a date and I was trying to I had ulterior motives and
Uh-huh.
they weren't going too well, so I was pretty mad.
And bored,
Yeah,
clearly.
and bored. So the guy who was like in the row behind me, above me, he saw me on my phone and he was like, "You want to turn that off?" And I was like, "You want to stop giving me so much sass? You want to walk outside, buddy? Since you're so tough, huh?"
You want to leave me alone?
I didn't do
and
anything.
and he couldn't see my face and I couldn't see his face.
Right.
Because it was so dark.
Right.
And I was like, you know what? No, walk outside. Let me see your purty face. Come outside with me. And we walked outside, and I was like, what? You're actually a pretty neat guy. And he was like, oh, yeah.
So, okay, so you jumped a few steps here, because we thought you annoyed somebody into giving you a job. It's more like you accidentally made friends attempting to annoy somebody.
Attempting to
and
annoy
then
him.
proceeded
So,
to get a job.
would
by
your
making friends.
recommendation be more annoying to people?
No!
I would say no, that's a dually
That's
special.
that's a feat of his.
Yeah,
It's
it's
taking
like-
straight.
It's amazing.
Not everybody
It's
can
amazing.
replicate that.
Oh my
But
God.
you do need to find what you are good at, right? So she's
Yeah.
charismatic, so she can do that, right?
Right.
Try to
Well,
be creative.
everybody's got a charisma in them.
Right,
It
but
just-
try to be creative.
You gotta find it, right?
And
You gotta
the thing
figure
is,
out
I think
what
a lot of
works.
it can be learned. For instance,
Right.
I had like a ton of trouble. I was very, very shy of public speaking, and in high school I forced
Well,
myself
not
to
anymore, obviously.
Oh
I
no!
like forced myself to go up, like, you know, when they asked someone to come up and like present in class, I would do it, and I was terrible, like, for a very long time. But you get
Hello,
used to
my
it, like,
name
you
is
learn it.
Nathan.
Yeah, you have to put yourself in the situation, and that's really
Yeah, and although I don't enjoy it, I know how to do it, and I can get comfortable doing it. So I feel like charisma, for someone who doesn't come naturally to, is something that you can sort of turn on and turn off. Like, okay,
Yeah.
charismatic mode.
you
I
have.
actually
Everyone
think-
has a charisma. Like there are some people that I know that. Excuse me. That tracking their voice, it is such a bland thing. They don't have that much inflection. They don't have a ton
Julie
of
doesn't have
tones.
that problem.
They just
Shut up.
speak, and they say it straightforward. But their charisma's in their words, right?
Yeah.
Because they don't have the inflection and the emotion in the voice, it's all in their words, and you just listen there, and it's not like a hype guy when you get up there in front of the E3,
Oh,
and he's just
yeah.
like, we have all this stuff, because he's the guy who's got 50 different tones, and his voice goes 5 different directions at once, right? But then you get the guy that's like telling you what needs to happen, right? But he says it in such a poetic way that you're just sitting there like you didn't
Listening and you have
you
to
didn't
follow.
even
Imagine-
realize. It's a different type of charisma entirely. You don't even realize that you've been enthralled by this guy for the past hour, right?
Yeah.
Then you come up and it's like, I should start a game. Like,
Well,
I love
think
those
about
guys
it.
because like they speak softly almost, right? Like, you know,
yeah.
Yeah, what
like
it's
it's
monotone.
but it's one of those guys.
It's they're engaging. Like they get you think like, you know,
They're the guys with the soft voice, and for people that have a soft voice, I know a lot of soft-spoken people. I promise you, it is not impossible to get the room to listen to you. It really isn't. And if you get good enough, there are people who are soft-spoken that when they start speaking, the room goes quiet to listen to them.
right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That
'Cause,
kind
like,
of
they won't
charisma,
speak unless
that
they have something to say.
presence, right, is just something so amazing. And I imagine you could get any job you wanted. If you walked into the room, spoke softly, and everyone was quiet to listen to you, anyone would hire you, right? Because
Well,
they're into you.
I say be creative, right? We're all going to a school of innovation.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Advancing technology, right? So be creative. Like,
Oh, yeah.
don't just limit yourself to having a face-to-face confrontation. Send them a little, like device that'll have your face pop up or something, like,
Yeah,
or a
wait a
message that'll pop up, like a hologram.
Well,
wait
one
a
of the
minute.
things that I would imagine
You
doing
know what I
is
just thought of?
if you're a game student here, right, and you're working on a SIP and you want to get an internship, because you do need an internship
If you
to
say that now,
graduate,
you
right?
can't patent it because it's
Yeah,
publicly streamed.
Oh yeah, you can't patent it if you say it out loud. This is public. But like, this is anyone can take this idea. If you've got an internship, especially somewhere local to here, and you're working on a game that actually fits inside that internship, especially if it's for a VR game, especially, if you really want to get their attention, like, apply by inviting them to come down to the school and play the game. Right? Get in
Yeah.
a VR headset that they might not normally have access to, a super nice deck, and just play. Right? Like, it's something that I have learned from Ashley, like her coffee thing. You want to find another reason to why they want to talk to you, right? It can't just be for the job, because they don't want to work everywhere. Talk about themselves, talk about something they're interested in, do something interesting. That works,
Well, if
right?
you've already got the job interview, you've already got the job.
This is
Yeah.
true.
The job interview
Yeah.
is really to solidify whether or not
Right.
you're gonna fit in the culture. Because you've already proved yourself and you've already passed everything that you need to be because your resume already has the skill set. The interview is it's a personality
So I have
test.
to do
It's
some
like
numbers.
Aren't
when
there a lot
the
of
fisherman gets a fish and it's like,
Well-
is this the right fish?
Well, aren't there
No.
a lot of
I mean,
aren't
you
there a lot of
said
situations where they do interviews? Is that's the real thing that they're testing though? Because
Like
I've
your
heard a
interview
lot.
skills?
Well, not necessarily, but I've heard a lot of situations where it's like, yeah, the resume determines if you get the interview, but the interview doesn't determine that you got the job yet. That's where the real like search is, in the interviews.
Yes. Your resume just tells them that you can do the job.
Yeah, that you
Right.
qualify for.
You're qualified to do the
Just
job.
50%.
Yeah, the interview is the personality test. It's
Still the
really just to
50%.
make sure, and it's to make sure that you're the right fit for whatever they're looking for. And it's always a specific answer they're looking for.
Right.
It's true.
Because
And
they
you're
always
always
have a specific problem they wanna solve.
Right. And you're competing with way less people in that case. You don't have to beat everyone, just the other like 4 or 5 guys.
Yeah, yeah.
Research. You know that company in and out, and you're like, I can help you do this, and this, and you look at that job, and you come in and look, I can do this, and this.
Right.
And you look like you have a need to do that, and that. That's what they wanna hear.
Now,
So-
for games, and this is something I've learned, for games people who are looking for, especially designers who are applying to a job, all design jobs or similar, I don't know about the programming or art side, but I know that the design jobs, they always have an interview question, where one of the questions they say, hey, here's one of the things we did, what would you change about it or do better? And the thing that's
Oh,
always.
they do that in programming.
Yeah, okay, yeah. What's always said, and it probably applies to a lot of other industries that are similar in nature of innovation, that kind of thing. What they always expect you to do is give concrete, like, actual things that you should do better. They never want to hear, oh, it's perfect. You will lose the job on the spot.
They wanna hear concrete, you're right, they wanna
Yeah,
hear
they want-
concrete solutions.
They know that
How
it's
to
not
solve a problem.
perfect. They want you to solve the problems that they either didn't have time to or couldn't solve.
Yeah, they wouldn't
Or
have a job
couldn't
if it
think
was.
of.
Yeah.
Because guess what?
Just pointing something
If,
out,
yeah,
right?
if you point something out that even they didn't spot and make it better,
Yeah, like that's even better. 'Cause
That's even better.
That'll
Way better,
solidify you in their head, because not only are you somebody who was able to solve a problem they know about, but you're somebody who was able to point out a problem they didn't know.
They didn't
and
know
then
about.
then solve it.
One of the things
And then you make it.
for programming jobs, in specific, if you're trying to get in like entry level, you don't have too much experience, is they don't want you to be working on like the big fancy up and coming tech. They want someone to do all the menial work, right?
Yeah.
So if you can prove you can do that and do it well, then they'll probably hire you. You know, that's where you'll get your experience.
And you're in. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the depth just comes within your,
How many
like,
of you guys have an internship?
I am talking with
The answer is
8-bit
no.
right now.
I'm
but
scared.
I'm too brand
How
new.
long did you graduate?
I'm too brand new.
This is my third
I'm
term.
enjoying my
This is my
time.
third term. I
I'm
just
enjoying my
finished
time here at
summer.
UAT.
Because I mentioned before I was on a rush after like basically Ashley came into my English 101 lab and used charisma on everyone, and so everyone was inspired to get
Charisma
a
check.
job.
I'm rolling.
Right?
Charisma roll.
In that
Naturally.
little frenzy that I got put in, I actually got an available internship, but I looked around and realized that I don't have time to do that right at the moment, because I was still a freshman. It was still my first term. I need to adjust to the college workload before I add another thing on top.
Oh yeah, you gotta get your assignments done.
Yeah.
Very important.
So I had to turn that down, unfortunately.
You gotta graduate.
But I have been looking at getting an internship that actually ends up being a credit, instead of just grabbing it on top of my first term.
Language.
What? First credit, grabbing on top of my first term?
Oh, never mind. I thought you said the C word.
What's the word?
No.
We're not doing that.
Well,
you
we
almost
have-
got me, alright?
we have
I
8
was about to
minutes.
be like, you mean the
We have 8 minutes left.
So if, yeah, we should.
Um,
Kevin doesn't come to wrap us up yet, so I don't know.
It-
Did
it-
you want to talk about?
James doesn't seem to be popping up. I think we should let our
No.
friend. No, are you sure? You've been
No.
talking in the background. You don't want to come on camera?
What do you wanna talk about?
You don't wanna
Maybe,
show
maybe
your
what we
face.
do. Maybe what we're gonna do next time.
We would need like an overview, like to close this one off, talk about maybe the clubs or UATX, and then say, yeah. Do you want to
Are
see
you guys
next
gonna
time?
do another live stream at the next one?
Probably.
Yes.
Probably.
I would hope
Not
so.
much else broadcasting group does.
Alright. Not much else. We're gonna do so much fun stuff.
Yeah.
Hello, UAT world.
That is the woman behind the camera.
Yeah, she's been helping us all morning dealing
like
with
to do
our.
Sure, we'd like to thank
Patrick
you
Wade.
for just helping us out.
Well, you're
And
welcome. I think it's been great. You guys are talking about some amazing things, so I think it's important to get it out there.
It's really exciting. I'm actually curious, not only just how you're enjoying this and what you see us doing in the future, but how our viewers have been enjoying it, because I don't really know too much about who or how many people have been watching aside from this little face counter that's gone down slowly over the day.
What did it get?
It got up to 7 or 8.
7.
Yeah. And I'm hoping, one of the things actually we were at lunch, it was interesting. I wonder if it's possible we could get the stream on the next UATX on those 6 monitors downstairs.
Yes,
With
wouldn't that be great?
with some sound,
So,
just in the common area.
First of all, we have to work on the audio, so we apologize for any audio difficulties anyone is having.
Indeed.
Right.
Sorry.
We are aware and we're working on it. That's step 1. Streaming you guys on those TVs downstairs would be awesome. That's a great idea. Getting you out of this room would be another great idea.
For sure.
But I did notice that the people wanted to just sit down as soon as they got in the door.
Yeah,
And
people are scared of live
they
streaming.
didn't want to go all the way back there, so there were more and more people just getting trapped. I was like, oh my god.
And they're kind of out of our field of view, so I didn't realize until they're walking out, I could have asked them if they had anything to
Yeah.
say, or.
So get you guys in a more public space, but I think that for the next UATX, when is that? July.
Is it next month?
26th.
Yeah.
Are you oh
The
my
next
wait,
UATX is
that's
July
so
28th.
soon. That's so soon.
Yeah.
So
Wait,
can you
Mom.
join us?
You have to prepare.
Oh
Right
my
on, friends.
god.
I
Visit
forgot
us.
that they do so many during the summer.
The heat is fun. It's not bad, right guys?
As long as you're inside.
It's
Yeah.
beautiful. It's
If
wonderful.
you are from the north, do not go outside without water.
Don't bring a coat.
I mean, it's only a 2-minute
No,
walk.
don't be me. Don't bring like 7 hoodies.
I for some
If you're
reason
from-
brought my leather jacket.
Same.
I'm not from the north.
I have a
but I for
winter
some
jacket.
reason brought it.
That's
I was like,
I also
I'm
have
gonna
another
need this,
jacket.
and I instead, I don't know why I thought I need it. I guess
Yeah,
it's
he's
kind
sitting,
of.
sitting in the hoodie and it's 110 out.
Right, but see, that's just me. It's part of my personality.
I mean, at this point, if it was a lighter color of any kind, you could make the excuse that it's actually keeping you cooler because
yeah,
it's
it's
off.
too
But
bright in here. It's so
Yeah.
That's great. If you guys enjoy living here.
I love it. Coming from Houston, being able to breathe during summer is really great. There is no humidity, and for people who are used to like some medium humidity, like 40 on average, it's gonna be kind of dry. And I know I had to walk around basically with a gallon of water strapped to my hip for the first term I was here, because my body was so used to getting, I think, 20-30% of its daily hydration from osmosis.
So yeah, water.
Because I was breathing it in quite literally, and it was getting it on my skin. But now that wasn't a thing, once I got used to it, it's really nice. I really like the mornings here. In Houston, the mornings, especially the evenings, just whenever the sun wasn't up in Houston, it was still like a sauna. It was still horrible. Out here, it is so nice.
Night swimming. Who doesn't live to night swim?
Oh,
I don't know if you guys
yeah.
get the opportunity, but
Yeah.
it's one of the best things.
It's so nice.
On the roof.
Yeah,
So,
and then
It kind of feels-
cool on the roof. I heard.
It feels like unreal. It feels like it's just like the change of day
It's like-
and night. That's it.
I mean, it's the desert. It's like
That's all
and
I
like,
can-
in
that's all I see
Houston-
here is
in
just like,
Houston, in the summer,
But our
okay.
it's
sunsets are amazing.
They are.
Oh, they're
The
beautiful.
Arizona
I agree.
sunsets.
Especially the hill behind the campus.
Yes.
It's 15-20 minute walk up there.
Yep.
About.
Indeed.
It's not that hard, and it is
Arizona, there is nothing like an Arizona sunset.
beautiful. Oh, it's wonderful. And being able to go outside, like if you want to do physical stuff and it's summer, you can actually go outside and avoid the heat. I know in Houston, I hate it.
Stay under
I
the
That's
hate
shade.
it.
100. Not when it's 100. Wait.
Well, at night.
Well,
At night for sure.
Yeah,
So
at
I
night,
look
30
at
degrees
a
colder.
reverse hibernation. So instead of hibernating when it's really, really cold like you do in the other states, here we just hibernate when it's hot.
We stay inside.
So
The shade,
we stay
really
inside.
does noticeably help.
It honestly is like
Any
30
place,
degrees colder.
any place with grass, like the quad out here is noticeably cooler than anywhere else you're
Especially
gonna
when the
go.
sprinklers go
Yeah,
on. you know?
because the grass and the sprinklers keep it so cool.
Mhm.
Super nice to stay outside. But when the sun sets, it noticeably cools down like 20 degrees, really fast actually. But in Houston, you go outside and it's night and it looks super nice out and like it's cool. It looks, because the moon lights in, clear skies, and it's cool. It's summer weather, right? And then you open the door and you get punched in the face by 80% humidity with like retaining 89-degree temperature
Yeah,
from the
that's
100-degree day. It's
not-
like, oh, outside's not a good idea, never mind. And you just
We're really
close
happy
the
in that
door.
weather, I'm sorry.
No, it's horrible. And it messes with your hair. You go
Yeah, of
outside, your
course.
hair goes everywhere.
See, unlike everybody here, I'm an Arizona hater.
Where you from?
New York.
Oh, well.
That would explain it.
I'm from Ohio.
But Arizona's great to go to school, right? We don't hate Arizona because we get
Yeah.
weather.
Yeah, I like the school here,
Well-
but everything else.
It's great.
Well, he's
It's
kind of like the
despite
East, like, he's so
Arizona.
used to a different style, I think.
Well,
Like,
you
So like, let me
The
ask
one-
you, New York.
I'm literally.
is it the temperature?
Can
Well-
you get a taco in New York?
Yeah, you can.
No.
Yes,
Not
not a
A
good.
taco,
You can get
no.
a taco.
A taco.
A taco.
Really,
A
like,
taco.
Not like is it Taco Bell? We're not. I mean, like,
No.
have you
No,
had?
not Taco Bell.
Wait. Have you had a taco outside the cafe?
taco.
Yeah.
Have you had a taco? Like
An
real
actual
Mexican,
taco.
like
You know why?
Well, I would say New
No.
York is one of those.
Like a
is
Nacho
one of those
Libre
places that you're
taco.
gonna.
well,
Well, no,
like, I
because-
feel like there's no tacos in
No.
there.
New
No,
York
no,
is
no.
one of those places where you're gonna get food from everywhere because
Yeah.
it's New York.
but-
Because
Now, if
there's,
you're
like-
talking Pennsylvania,
There's
no
tons
way.
of people outside
Taco.
that are from many
Oh.
different places just selling things.
Okay.
Just
When you
when
get
you're
those
walking
trucks
around.
and whatnot.
Yeah, the food trucks especially.
Yeah, and the food trucks.
All right.
Mostly food
So
trucks.
next UATX, you guys are doing another live feed. You guys do
Right.
a live podcast every weekend. How do people find that?
We go to the UAT live Twitch channel.
Yes.
Sweet.
We let's see.
It should be the same for the school, cause ours streams to them, so.
Right.
We stream as of right now, I believe at.
Saturdays.
Yeah, but I'm trying to convert the time from 7 to 8 Central, 5 to 6 Arizona time.
Yeah.
But that's West Coast. Central is easiest for people to convert to, so
Okay.
7 to 8 Central we stream.
And then it's only 3 hours ahead
Yeah,
for
and we
each-
do bring in guests who want to speak of things. We usually have a topic or two, and then have a guest, and that's it.
All right.
And then next UATX will be streaming live January 28th. Catch us.
January
Yeah.
28th.
Or them.
We'll see
Thank you
you
for watching,
then.
and we'll see you at the next UATX.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.